Yes, everybody's working for the weekend. You have reached the Occasional Podcast, and this is Brian Hunter, and the PTA crew is here, and we are recording live from AXPONA 2024. Everybody keeps talking about the year. They're like, when I've been doing videos, room-to-room coverage, and they go, is it 2024? Because we've been here and been in this spot a couple of times now, and the show's as big as it's ever been. And we're in Schaumburg at the Convention Center. And anybody else have a differing opinion, please let me know. But do you guys kind of feel like this is the show that's the big show in U.S. now?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Has it taken the crown, the mantle from Rocky Mountain in a way?
No, for me, AXPONA takes over from CES.
Yeah, because CS is no more really, right?
Well, yeah, not for high-end audio. And so it became very anti. They kind of phased it out, and so we all went. But that was business to business. That wasn't for the public. And so it was a kind of a different show, but it was the show if you want to do business in this industry.
Yeah. Let's go around and everybody say their names so you can identify the name of the person. Everybody knows who Marc Phillips.
That is me. I am Marc Phillips, editor-in-chief.
Graig Neville.
Grover Neville.
I'm Brian Hunter, and the doc...
Matthew Partrick.
The doc is here again.
Yes. So, we are here at AXPONA, and we have kind of a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack. I want to thank everybody who wrote in with their songs to get the track thing going. So, if you remember the last episode, I said write in your picks to have me listen to these tracks at the show so we can push out some of the trash and bring in some of the new. So some of those songs were Rye Coder with VMN Bots at Gangs Delta Blue. That was a very interesting track.
I have that album. It's fantastic.
Final View from the Rooftops by London Electricity was a recommendation. And also HAEVN, Eyes Closed. The Sea. So those are some great records. I appreciate everybody who sent it in, everybody who commented on the Facebook page. I gave them a listen. I really enjoyed myself, so I love that you guys have great taste. That was fun. Unfortunately, one of the most ridiculous songs did dominate this show to me, and I'd like anybody else to chime in with this thing. I love to complain about the song selection here, but this particular song, I have heard it before the show, but never with this frequency. Queen Mary, Francine 13. Mark and I have talked about how there's like the low, grumbly voice, but there's this pulsating bass sound that everybody likes to show off. Yeah. Like the No Sanctuary song. This song was everywhere. It's fine. This artist seems great, but man, they played it a lot of places. Anybody else have a nomination for a song they heard? Just a lot of ubiquity?
I actually didn't hear anything standard in my run through the tower.
Nice.
It was almost all instrumental music, almost. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like I heard stuff that, not that it was all super exciting, but people played like weird Curtis Mayfield live stuff, and I heard like some Becca Stevens thing I hadn't heard before, and with Becca Stevens and Willie Nelson. It was like really kind of cool, and I don't know. I heard no Take Five, Diana Krall. I didn't hear any of the standards.
There was somebody playing a Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson duet. That was kind of interesting.
See, we're making a difference. We're making the world a better place, one audio show at a time. Question for you guys. Did you hear, or what percentage would you say you heard, classical music being used as the demo? Because one of the complaints online has been people say classical music is played here, but in reality, when you go from room to room, classical is used very little.
I will boldly say that I have not heard a single classical music track at the show so far.
I'd say 10%.
Yeah, maybe 5%.
I haven't heard any. I almost asked at one point, and I remember there was a point last year where there was a couple shows where I would ask for classical, and they would, reluctantly put it on, and then people would walk out of the room. So it's like, no, this is where our roots are.
Yeah, the Zesto title room was playing a Nutcracker Suite when I was in there,
audio is really good,
and that was actually very nice. It was a really, really great album.
I heard Dance Macabre, which I think is it Camille Saint-Saëns? Yes. I heard that. I heard an Elgar cello concerto, and because I Shazam all of this, I can't remember it. I just end up Shazamming it, and it's right here to help me remember what it is. Oh, and Don Giovanni. So.
And I heard Phantom of the
Someone
Opera.
played Don Giovanni at the show? That's bold.
Well, I heard Phantom of the Opera, too. That was fun.
Well, that's not really classical, but yeah.
Close enough.
It's Broadway. It's Broadway.
It's organ music. Come on.
It's Broadway.
It sounds like church to me. Scary church. So I'll just launch into one of the cool experiences that I saw that was unique was actually a temporary kind of thing that happened in the DeVore room. So John DeVore of DeVore Fidelity put on his door. I walk up and I see audiophile warning. This room is currently playing 78s. And I wasn't really sure what that meant when I walked up. I do spin vinyl, but the 78 thing was a little bit new to me. I walk in there, and this was my experience. He puts it on, and it says on the warning, like, hey, there's going to be a lot of noise and a lot of crackle on this. And I sit there, and he puts it on, and I'm listening, and the noise floor is quite high. It sounds a little scratchy and that kind of thing. And I start to get a little nervous for him. Like, I'm like, oh, John, what's going on? What's going on? Because no music started to play right away. He put the needle on the record. It spun a little. And then it starts to play. And I see, I know why he's doing this. It has a very unique sound. It was new to me. I know there's probably a lot of people out there like, dude. But it was new to me. And the energy that came from the music with the loud noise floor, with the crackling, was kind of fun and unique and different from what I had heard at all the audio shows. I feel like we strive for cleanly, solid state. I mean, maybe there's some twos, but the fidelity sound is not quite what that was. And I found the rich tonality and the energy in there really good. Did anybody else kind of have a fun?
I heard that, and I appreciated the fact that he was willing to do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, that makes me think, well, he has no worry about his signal chain and his speakers. Mm-hmm. So, because they're all in mono. They tend to be kind of noisy, but he wasn't afraid to do it, and I think that's probably
So I knew a dealer in Texas, and he had a dedicated 78 rig, and he would turn people on. He had a great collection. Now, the crazy thing about 78s is that he said, of course they all sound that horrible because they were all played with nails for 50 years before you heard them.
That's true.
But the other thing about it is that he had pristine, unplayed 78s. And not unplayed, but mint. And we listened to a couple of them, and it's an amazing experience to hear that because there really is a purity of tone and a great, it's amazing. It is mono, but if you're a real hardcore audiophile, you don't mind mono. Mono sometimes is the better way to listen. But a 78, it'll change your mind if you can hear a good one, because everybody hears nothing but bad ones, because there aren't many good ones. But it's quite wonderful.
Like, because I've heard 78s at like Bernie Grunman's or History of Recorded Sound or, all the old mastering studios in LA. And one of the things about 78s, Mark's totally right. So 78s, there are stereo 78s, actually. They can be found. They're rare because they were only produced up until the early 60s, I think, for 7-inch singles. But there are some stereo ones, most mono. But 78s came out in the era where they were transitioning from Victrola over to microgroove styli, right? And so what happened was people would play them on the old gramophone style, and those styli are huge. Like Mark said, like they look like nails. They're gigantic. And when you play them like that, you just ruin them. They just get annihilated. But a good clean 78 actually can have, because it's cut faster and the lathe likes to cut fast like a record lathe, they can actually be quieter than 45s and 33s. And when they're really good, because a lot of that music back then, they didn't have much they could do. They had to balance in-room with natural acoustic ensembles with minimal filtering. It can sound unbelievably good. Just like levels of fidelity from the 40s, 50s that you didn't know existed, like better than even... It's the closest you'll get in a commercial consumer format to master tapes, early gen master tapes. And it can sound amazing, but it's very hard to find good clean 78s. That was cool that John did that, because some of those really sounded amazing. That was a cool experience.
Today's episode of the Occasional Podcast is sponsored by Music Hall. For over 25 years, Music Hall has designed and built high-value, no-nonsense turntables. Audiophiles are told the more they spend, the better it gets, but Music Hall believes you can get great sound and build quality without breaking the bank. Their newest model, the Music Hall Stealth Direct Drive Turntable, was just awarded PartTimeAudiophile's 2023 Best Value Award. Editor Marc Phillips wrote, "It didn't take me long to realize a Music Hall Stealth turntable was a bit of a miracle. A great sounding direct drive table for a crazy low price." Music Hall remains a steadfast advocate for quality and affordability. Whether you're looking for your first or your last great turntable, do yourself a favor and visit musichallaudio.com to find your nearest authorized dealer or to order online with free shipping and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Our friends at ZMF Headphones are sponsors of today's episode. ZMF is a curated collection of various sounds and styles in the form of dynamic and planar magnetic wood headphones, designed by founder Zach Merbach since 2011. ZMF has garnered an A+ recommended component in Stereophile, Headphone of the Year on Headphonics.com, and been a 2-time winner of the SBAF Golden Schlong Award. ZMF Headphones. That's the letter ZMF, HeadPhones.com. ZMF Headphones is the place to go to check out ZMF's collection and learn more. ZMF, traditional craft and modern acoustics. Greg, tell me, what was your general impression of the show this time? How did it kind of feel as a show by itself?
There were more good sounding rooms, but there weren't as many truly great sounding rooms as I think we had last year.
I would agree. I would completely
mouth.
agree because there was a lot. I mean, I'm looking at my list and I heard a lot of good stuff, but I didn't hear anything that just blew my mind.
Right. There were not any rooms that I walked out of and was like, oh my gosh, I need to go back.
I mean, I would pick the Acora, the big Acoras. They always kind of thrill me, and it's the same thrill. But I've heard it so many times now. It's like I haven't heard anything new in a while.
No, that room is set the new bar, I think, to some degree of what's capable in a showroom.
Right.
And it's consistent year after year after year.
Which is kind of impressive in
It
its
is
own
impressive
way.
in its own way.
Just getting
Absolutely.
a sound that consistent. Because these hotel rooms are very, the AXPONA hotel rooms compared to some of the other shows are quite small. And there's a big credenza that can't be moved. I do notice more people bringing room treatments of various kinds, though. And I think that did help with the sound, I would say, was more consistently even. I heard less rooms that were, extremely bassy or had weird,
I've heard,
bright things.
I've heard quite a few rooms with the same room node.
Yeah.
And
there's
everybody's
low
kind
end.
of, sorry, that's the best I can do.
Yeah, there's like a 70, 80 hertz kind of upper bass thing, and then there's another like 700 to 800 hertz like mid-range funky thing. And yeah, but I would say the room treatments seem to have helped. More people are bringing them.
And I think that people have been coming to the show enough times that they understand what the challenges are with the rooms, so they can at least address some of those kinds of issues.
It's listening through. So you're listening through to what the system, because you can't help this. You have one day to set up. You walk into a hotel room and you don't know until it's too late the problems you have and you have to solve. That's why if you're at an audio show, you should always go on Sunday, because they've figured out everything, and that's when everything sounds good. But you go on Friday in the morning, there's still a lot of rooms where they're still trying to fix a problem.
Well, like the Amson Sound Room is a good example. They set that up, and it sounded okay, but they came back and they made some adjustments to the tweeter, and it's like, oh, it sounds much better today than it did yesterday, because they made some adjustments because of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's why I reserve Sundays for going back around to the rooms that I was really impressed with them, because they're going to be even better on Sunday. Just to double check to make sure I'm right about it.
And Mark, any kind of overall comments before we get into the more room by room stuff?
Oh, I like the comment about there being a lot of really good rooms. I'm looking at my list. I'm like, wow, that's nice. And I'm thinking of my best to show list. And there's a lot of contenders here.
There wasn't anything that was so far and away better than any other room.
No, but there was a lot of good.
But there was a lot of good rooms, yeah.
So let's just talk about, maybe put in your back pocket what you think your best of was for now, and kind of stick with 2 rooms that stuck out to you that you heard. Grover, you want to kick it off?
If I had to pick 2 rooms, there was a Tidal room with Zesto that played some Cannonball Adderley, like old jazz records, and it sounded really nice in there. It was like cool to hear Tidal with tubes. That was kind of a different thing, but I really enjoyed the sound in there. All the Tidal rooms and Win Vimberg rooms also always sound really good. And then the YG and Vinny Rossi room when I went in it. Really was a very even sound, very sweet. I would say, compared to YG that I'm used to from years past, there's a new kind of YG sound now, and I quite like the new house sound for YG. They're doing really good work, I think. They've changed a bit of how the high end is tuned, and it's much more...
They've redesigned that waveguide for the tweeter. Yeah. That it's all based on computer modeling, and so it's more precise and it does a wider dispersion.
Yeah, it's more even across the whole room. It's not quite so focused on the sweet spot. I think it's a little more forgiving sometimes of records that are not as high quality. I think it's very sweet sounding. I like the new YG sound.
Yeah, I liked both those rooms too. And just to kind of add on to, YG was in a lot of rooms this year. And then we just came up from the Luxman room, and the Luxman with the Magico room was really excellent, and that was another room that is pretty consistent in their sound, but they do have some new gear from Luxman that they're showing this year that I don't think they showed last year.
That was S3 Mark IIs.
I'm not sure if they're the Mark IIs, but they said they were the 2023 versions.
Okay, so S3s, new S3s with MX10s or M10X. M10Xs, and then we snuck into the very end of the Chad Kasem talk, and he was playing a War.
Yeah, that sounded it's very, very good. Yeah, he was selling some versions of his that he had cut, I guess, and I might have to track that War one down. That was a really good sounding album. But so the Luxman room was impressive. I really liked that one. They've got some cool stuff that they'll be coming out with gear wise. They've got a new DAC and a new phono pre that should be coming out as well. That'll be fun to check out. And then I think the other room that I think stood out for me that the other guys maybe haven't covered yet was, well, you said to hold off on our favorites. That's a tough one. But I'll probably steal Mark's thunder because this is probably his favorite. But the audio group Denmark with the C1.
Yeah, you stole from me too. That was going to be my favorite, but go ahead.
So I don't know if that one was my favorite. It was absolutely my top, probably maybe 2 or 3. But that room was really excellent.
And I will go back into it. We'll dive back into exactly what the C3 is and where it lays in the line near the end. Marco, give me 2. Give me 2.
Give me 2. I'll give you. So every single show I go to, I have to mention the Jeff Joseph Dashi Audio Cardis room. So in this case, they have a new somebody new joining them, and it's the ATIS cartridges from Lithuania. And they had a cartridge, and they said at some point that it was specially made for the show. And they make cartridges, some of their cartridges, the top ones, the body is made out of mammoth tusk. And I thought, it sounds fancy and everything, but, Koetsu has had some really crazy things. Yeah. But once they switched to vinyl, it was, again, it's like I always talk about how great and how much I like the Joseph Audio sound. And he had his, the Pearl graphenes with the new Ultra version, which is designed around a new driver, a Seis driver, which Seis thinks is the greatest driver they've ever made. So he made the Pearl around it, which usually means he has to redesign and replace some of the parts, and he upgraded some of the parts. But the combination of that room, I love that room always. This room, it sounded better than ever. And I think a lot of it was that ATIS cartridge on a J-Secor turntable. So that was a definite favorite of mine. And I'm getting the ATIS cartridge.
Okay. Because you've got the J-Sakura table already in-house.
I have the J-Sakura, the initial Max. The one in there was the standard Max, which is the next one up. So I look at my huge turntable in my listening room, and it's the entry level, but the Max version, which has an additional plinth. And so it's just crazy to think that that's the bottom level because it is such a fantastic turntable. But going a step up, and I've heard the big reference too, J-Sakura is amazing, amazing turntables. And I think they're really gaining some strength because you see them a lot at shows now.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is I saw a lot more people actually playing vinyl at this show than I have in the past. I mean, almost every room had a turntable in the past, but people were actually using it this year.
Yeah.
I saw in the MoFi room that I really liked was the Music Hall Stealth that I love so much, but they had EMT arm and EMT cartridges on them. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty cool. So my other one I really pick, I would say the C1, but you've already mentioned it, but I'm really digging Win Wong's rooms. The last 3 or 4 shows, he's just taking it to a new level. And so he started bringing in a new turntable from Germany, and it's called Thiele, Thiele, and it's Helmut Thiele who originated from Thorns. And he has come up, and so he's got cartridges and no, it's not cartridges, tone arms and turntables. And the tone arm is a 4-pivot tone arm. So it's one of those that kind of stretches when it goes across the record. So it kind of goes back to the past, but and he was using Ortophon cartridges. But once he started playing the with records, I was like, wow, this is super clear and beautiful. And so that'll be something big. People start knowing more and more about Tila. So that would be my 2.
Doc, what's your 2?
For sure, Vinny Rossi with YG Acoustics. I'm a Vinny Rossi fanboy and have been for many years. So I was intrigued to see his newest update of the Brahma. So I think he was using a preamp. I got to look at my photos, but I'm pretty sure he was using a preamp and 2 monoblocks. I was not as impressed with the other YG speakers that I've seen in the show like you were, Greg, and I thought Vinny is so good at room setup. He had a couple of very strategically placed sound absorption panels, and I thought that room sounded great. It also helps that he has very good, a very thorough thought process about what kind of music he's going to play, and I don't think he's necessarily playing to the strengths and avoiding the weaknesses, because I just feel like those pieces of equipment really don't have a lot of weaknesses. So, and the second one would be, have you guys ever heard of these Orchestral speakers that from KMD? It's a Korean company. They were on the 7th floor.
The big blocky ones, cubes?
Yeah. I thought they were crazy. I'd never seen these before, and I was so impressed. Now, the caveat is the speaker that they were playing is $250,000, so there you have it. But they had they had 2 others that were for $19,000 and then one for $24,000. It was a 2-way and then a 3-way. So I'd love to see if they could send some of that our way one day.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing those last year. They're really weird.
They're super weird looking.
Yeah.
And
they're like on this cage, and then they're like 3 individual boxes, and you can like tune the phase on them and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Right, kind of like the Wilson Audio, time delay tuning. They can do that, and one of the things that Wilson doesn't offer that they do is not only are they adjusting time delay, but they can also kind of rocker it in so that the bass cabinet is basically in a perpendicular line with the wall, but they will toe in the mids and the tweets. I thought they were super cool. And I'd never seen them before, so that's what I was really spent time looking for. This show was stuff that I was not familiar with that I was impressed by. So,
yeah. Now there were 2 YG Vinny Rossi rooms. I think Mark Sosa had the other one.
Mm-hmm. No, that was QLN and Vinny Rossi.
Oh, you're right.
The new $40,000 QLNs.
Yeah.
No, 52, I think.
52? Is that really? Yeah. I didn't realize it was that much.
Yeah,
that room did sound nice,
sounded
though.
pretty good too.
It was really,
It sounded good.
We've been talking about it for 2 years because I picked the reference monitors as the product of the year in 2022, and these are a floor standing version with extra, subwoofer, low frequency driver, and I want to go back and listen to them again because I listened to them like an hour ago, and it still hasn't settled in, but I think there's greatness there.
If I may, Brian, there was a room that I thought was quite interesting. The Morel room. Did you go in that room?
yes.
No, you talked about it.
What was it? What did you think?
Well, first of all, there's a couple of options with what was going on with this room. They either had that rear firing port dialed in perfectly, or I'm a bass head and I liked what they were doing, or there was or they had a subwoofer in the bathroom that they weren't telling anybody about, because those were maybe 6-inch drivers.
2 of them, massive, clean, crazy low end, like.
Now, I know...
I'm glad I'm not hallucinating, that I'm not the only one that
So I walked
like,
in and they
what
were
the heck is going
playing
on?
maybe 80 dB, 78 to 82, not crazy loud, but a little.
They were loud when I went in.
But when so I know you said that you found them too bright because they were probably turned up too loud when you walked in.
I thought they were a little bit on the bright side for my tastes, but you mentioned they were a sub $2,000 speaker.
That's a $2,000 speaker. It looks kind of like a Sonus Faber, like it's got a really nice kind of wood finish. And
the two-tone
finishes
finish on
are
it
lovely.
is very, very nice.
And he was playing it, and I was like, man, this sounds killer. And I saw 10 people come up and say, how much is this speaker, and where's the subwoofer? And he goes, $2,000, no subwoofer. And he said it like 10 times. I was like,
are they from Israel? Is that?
Yes, they're Israel, and they're famous for being a driver manufacturer. They've had loudspeaker lines in the past, but they don't get quite the attention as just the drivers. But they've been known for making drivers out of Israel for many decades.
Yeah, so this new line, very stylish looking. The price point, $2,000, and like you said, for the size of the speaker and the price, it was like, my God, this is clean and goes deep, and it was like, this is a very impressive, affordable speaker.
All kidding aside, if there wasn't anything that was tucked into a corner they weren't talking about, my next question would be, are they finicky to place? So that could be because it's a narrow floor stander with a rear firing port.
He kind of just had them. They were just in the room firing straight ahead, kind of close to the back wall. There really wasn't much that was.
Maybe we should get those in.
Yeah, I found those small floor standers, like the triangles and probably the Morels and some of those, are so easy to place in a room. Well, not just the two-way bookshelves, but just the small footprint floor standers, because you can move them around because they're small footprint, and get them kind of to sound good pretty quickly.
Yeah, because the bigger the footprint, the harder it is. Because the speaker doesn't get out of its own way. It creates its own reflections by being there. And so that's one of the reasons why, for a long time, they started going to the front baffles, that were only slightly wider than the drivers because of that. So that's a way for the speaker to get out of its own way. But they're going away from that now. They're just finding other ways to deal with it.
The Morel guys were playing a cover of Kiss's I Was Made for Loving You when I was in there, which was like a super slow acoustic female voice. It was Marlena Mena is the woman's name, if anybody wants to look it up.
Yeah, that was a cool room, and it's cool to see that. And then some of the affordable Margulis speakers I've heard quite good in previous years. I didn't.
They weren't playing those when I was in that room, but yeah, the Margulis speaker line.
I feel like some of these smaller, medium-sized companies now are bringing out. Like historically, I've thought of big companies as being the ones who can afford to do a really nice, affordable speaker. But now these medium companies are putting out some really nice affordables. Under $4,000 options that I have to say are really enjoyable. From what I can.
And the Margulis speakers are designed by the daughter. That's her own special project.
They look nice.
Yeah, no, she does a good job. That's kind of her thing. That they, I think she went to school for it, but she did visual design, and so that's why they're always kind of lovely and everything. But then they use, more times than not, they use the Accuton ceramic drivers.
I heard their $30,000 flagship probably. Was that pre-COVID or was that like 2-3 years ago? Had to be 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years ago now.
Is it 2024?
Is it? Wow! But I thought it sounded pretty good. It sounded kind of a little bit like a Martin, obviously because of the Accuton driver. So, but I don't know. I thought they were pretty nice. Yeah. So, Brian, you haven't given us your two yet, have you?
Well, I wanted to throw out there in terms of like favorite new product, at least. I got a chance to talk with Andrew Jones, and he's moved his new MoFi series, I believe the 8-inch version, into a floor stander. So if anybody was waiting for a floor stander version of his previously only available in a 8 and 10-inch stand mount, you got an option now for a big, more punchy bass low end thing. I got to hear that. I thought it was pretty cool. That was a really good time. I want to point out the Auralic room, but I can't remember this giant. What's the brand of the giant red horn?
So this is a Chinese company. I was really, really impressed with those speakers. They're called ESD. They're from Guangzhou, which is in southeast Hunan. Crazy speakers.
Yeah.
And the amount of time that it takes for them to lacquer that, I think is what the paperwork they were giving me said 15 months. That is a long time.
It was an incredible set. Visually, it was incredible. I don't have that much experience with horns outside of what I hear at the shows, so that was like a real treat for me as well. And these are big.
The subs were horn loaded, and the horn was.
But it's one thing to go into a room to see a horn loadout that makes a trio from Avant-Garde look small.
Sure, and those were directional, right? Because we're not used to hearing bass as a very directional thing. It's used to be kind of omnipresent, so omnidirectional. Thank you. So to move in and out of that was interesting, because I was like, oh man, the bass falls way off when you are out of that. Which I mean, considering that the setup was 20 feet wide, it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, there was 10 horns, I think, and then a crossover box for each one. Well, I was told they were crossover boxes. Someone was joking. They said, what's in all those boxes? Because there's like
Nothing.
25 boxes there.
Some of the boxes are
and I said, if you can afford it, they'll tell you what's in them. It was a speaker for the Doctor Who fan, for sure. It's It kind of reminded me of the Marcel Duchamp, This Is Not a Pipe, with the big kind of, bass horn.
So ESD Acoustics every year in Munich, they have like the largest room, the largest exhibit room. And so last year they had some kind of shipping disaster. And so they had that big room with a very small system, which didn't work out for them. But the year before that, they had a $3.6 million system, and it was probably close to what you guys saw here, with all the boxes. And they all look, they're beautifully made with the giant horn speakers. And it's interesting, but it has its idiosyncrasies about it.
But it's pretty glorious, and it's pretty big, and I felt terribly bad for the people setting it up, because there was like a crew, and they worked tirelessly, and they were like, I saw like half horns being assembled, and like it's not all just one piece. So yeah, they worked pretty hard, and I enjoyed that one quite a bit. You know what I didn't get to hear that we always talk about? A Von Schweikert room. They had a regular sized room this time, or whatever regular sized listening room they wanted. Couldn't get in.
Really?
Couldn't get in. It was like a pipe. I could see the speaker through the break in the people. I posted a video, or I'll post a video, I think I haven't posted yet, about this, where it's like, they usually have a bigger room. They had a smaller room, and there was too many people, and they were blocking the path, and it was not moving at all, so I didn't get a chance to go in there and listen. Did anybody else get a chance to listen?
Good, because I tried to get in earlier. Same thing happened to me. It was probably around the same time. But it was just like, oh, there's Von Schweikert. And they're way up at the top at the 15th or 16th floor, and they're usually down in one of the big rooms on the bottom. But I tried to get in there. I could not squeeze in. Yeah,
they were in a similar type of a room at Capitol Audio Fest, and had a very similar setup. Double suite. Double suite. And the Westminster with the Ultra 55 signatures, I think, is what they had in that room. They sounded pretty good.
They had the subs, too, the phase canceling. Westminster and VSA have been paired together now for a couple shows. I think.
You're talking about Westminster Labs?
Yeah. I think.
Oh, I definitely need to try to get in there, because I like Westminster Labs a lot.
So Gary Leeds and Damon, I think, are working together. I've seen them a couple shows now, pairing Lampezator, Westminster Labs, and VSA. And I got to say, I think the sound is quite appealing.
Yeah, the Lampezator was a nice. I think, I don't know if they were running the Lampezator at Capitol, but it did sound good.
I think they had a Lampy. I remember taking a picture of it.
They usually have a Lampy.
Because Gary does Westminster and also Lampezator, so I think it's...
They usually do like a Lampezator Horizon.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Woo Audio. The Woo Audio WA23 Luna headphone amplifier is engineered to deliver an impressive sound experience with an ingenious design that is not the typical audio gear black box. The amplifier is an all-tube, pure analog circuit, operating in Class A mode for a powerful, balanced sound, outstanding stereo separation, and a wide bandwidth across all frequencies, so you hear every note in the recording. No matter what music you enjoy, WA23 Luna delivers Woo Audio's commitment to a natural sound that is non-fatiguing for all-day listening. Learn more at wooaudio.com. That's WOOAUDIO.com, where better sound begins.
Grover, did you get an opportunity to listen to any headphone gear while you're down there?
I did. I didn't spend a lot of time in the ear gear, although I did look around a little bit. There was only a few things that, there wasn't a ton of like super new debut-y stuff. It's not necessarily that kind of show for headphones. But what I did hear, which is new and is pretty wild, is the new Audio-Technica. They have 106 $108,000 or $117,000 amplifier preamp with a new set of headphones, and the headphones I think are 10 or 20K or something. The headphones are, maybe they're 5, but the headphones are not crazy, compared to the amp is like 100K.
What technology?
It's a 300B, like big old school, transformer
And
coupled tube amp.
Dynamic electric.
The headphone, I believe, is dynamic. It looks like other Audio Technicas, but it's got a really nice lacquer, and the cups are kind of cool. They said that it was kind of a passion project for one of the lead engineers there. And every time I've heard Audio Technica electronics, they're killer. Like they really have, when they choose to put out electronics, they can do some very, very nice stuff.
They had a tube amp out a few years ago that was gorgeous.
That was and sounded great too. They really have a distinctive sort of sonic profile that's all their own, but well judged. It's well balanced. It's rich. It's dynamic. The headphone system sounded really killer. I heard a 45 of Dave Brubeck's Time Out. That was like great sounding. I mean, I've heard that record a million times, but it was just really, really good sound. It was like, man, this is amazing.
And I did get a chance to check out the Warwick system there. They had a new...
I heard that in Florida. I love
that thing is so good.
This has got to be the best headphone rig I've ever heard in my life.
252 something. There's a
50, yeah.
But it includes the headphones.
Yes, it's all in one system. And that will function as a line stage as well. And I bet you it's actually quite a nice line stage.
I would imagine, too.
I like that they put the little demo booth. They have a sound isolated demo booth that blocks out all the outside noise. And it really is a nicer environment to listen, especially to something that kind of, rarefied.
They're pretty serious about it because they actually said they redid the booth. So they had a new booth in there, and they were trying to improve upon it once again for the new show. So I wanted to get in there really bad, but I didn't have a chance to. Again, nice line, looked great, but it looked really interesting. It's like all gold and everything. It's $50,000. It's flashy. It's high end for headphones.
You can get a non-gold version. There's like a champagne silver version for a bit less money.
Yeah, but why would you want that?
One other thing I noticed that was kind of cool, and this was the same in the 2-channel rooms, but the vinyl resurgence, at least in HiFi, is well underway. There was multiple tables that had vinyl playing in the ear gear area. Yep, so absolutely. The Audio Technica guys, like I said, played at 45 for me on an SME table, which SME's making their comeback now. Kat Orlean is DJing in a lot of rooms and is always lovely and super knowledgeable. And then I saw also Ivana Manley had a new phono stage and the Manley Absolute headphone amplifier, and she was demoing with an SME table. And I think there was a couple other tables that I saw in the ear gear area. And that was kind of cool because, if you can get a good, clean, quiet record, it really does sound very nice.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. I was delighted. Like, get some turntables in there. I mean, how often though do you really see a turntable rig that from a headphone enthusiast? It's just like a niche within a niche within a niche, and I think it's really cool, but it's just rare. So seeing that in there and getting those guys involved, I think it could be a lot of fun. So,
well, there's the T10 Bespoke. Mm-hmm. Have you guys seen that stuff? So they contacted Scott and I right before the show, and I was the one who went in and looked at it. So it is they're earbuds, and when I first looked at it, I thought it was a $100,000 set of earbuds, and I just plainly said, okay, well, somebody had to do it sooner or later. And so, but what it is actually is it's the earbuds, and it is a small device. It looks like a bloated cigar cutter, and but beautifully designed. And so when you're looking at the $100,000 models, there's diamonds in it and everything. So this is a very personal thing. Everybody seems to be wearing them around their neck. But the idea behind this is that with your phone, and it's Bluetooth, you can have this amazing sounding system. And it starts at about $3,500, but you can bling it up as much as you want. That's where the $100,000 come from. But it's a very sophisticated little device because not only will it stream from your phone, but it does noise reduction. You can adjust it, and there was a lot of adjustments in terms of preferences that you could make for hearing preferences or how you want to hear it. And it's this whole kind of a small subculture rising up right now because they had a lot of enthusiasts there that were really into all the things they were doing. And so, I mean, I think that I could probably get one and hear it, but I do think it's just a nice thing for people who are just out walking and stuff.
Brian, did you hear that Earman amplifier, that gigantic with the big red knobs?
No, but I was just thinking about it because did it appear in more than one rig?
It was at Moon Audio's
Yep.
booth, and it was at the Ear. I believe the name of the company is Earman.
Okay.
Or Earman, I think, something like that.
I
And
did
it's
see it twice, yeah.
quite a impressive. It's huge.
It reminded me of the delightful gaudiness of like Vivid Audio's huge tube amp, but it's like it's huge, it's massive, and everybody was. I didn't get a chance to listen to it myself, but everybody was kind of singing its accolades. But it was like a nice high end piece, big knobs, eye catching, and it was in 2 different rigs. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. But no, I did not get a chance to listen to it. But I think I might just after we get done here. So
It even dwarfed the Amps and Sound amps.
Yeah.
I would say it was epic. It was like, oh my gosh,
it was bigger than the Vivid Audio one too.
The Vifa?
Yeah, those 300 high gloss ones. So, yeah, it was good. It was a fun little room, and I just kind of thought it was more packed than I've ever seen it too. It was kind of like a sea of people in there, and I did I don't know if you guys noticed, but I did a live stream from the marketplace on Friday, and then from there today, and I really had to like make my way through the crowds. But
I noticed.
yeah, you know,
making my way downtown, walking fast.
and I'm home at last.
Yeah, Zach from ZMF, he was hamming it up. That's for sure.
He's a great guy. So earlier this week, I came into town a few days early, and Zach is a locally produced headphone manufacturer who he specializes in bespoke wood ear cupped headphones. And they have a facility here, and I got a chance to tour the facility. It was great fun, and he is such a good sport. He's just like, he's putting his energy out there. He's not afraid to like be silly or whatever for the camera, which is a extreme rarity here. People, if there's one thing about an audio show, is people don't really want to be silly. There's not a lot of silly in personality here, so it's very refreshing on his part. So yeah, and he has two new products, but it was a prototype and a new headphone. And he has a couple headphones amp, and he has a new headphone amp. So he does dabble in a lot of different things. He told me, this is so crazy, he actually moves a lot of ear pads. So he like makes ear pads for all kinds of headphones.
Well, when he sent me the headphones, he included like 30 or 40 pairs of ear pads, just because he said it's really important to get that perfect ear pad, to get the, and so, but it was insane how many ear pads I got in that box.
So the Audio Technica, the new, I think they had one of the Urushi Cup ones, and then the ones that go with the new flagship. They had 2 pairs. They had the Audio Technica in-house designed ear pads, and they also had a pair of ear pads that ZMF designed for them. That's always a fun story, because we met Zach when I was 13, and we were like walked up the steps to his like a little brownstone apartment in Chicago, and we're like in his closet like listening to all these little prototype Fostexes, and now he's here and he's got 15 employees and he's a real company selling ear pads to Audio Technica's flagship headphone. Like it does really feel like a cool glow up sort of story. And I do agree that your area was better populated this year by serious customers than it has been, I think, at past AXPONAs. It feels a little more cozy, a little more inviting, a little more part of the show's fabric than it has in past years.
Well, that's the T10 Bespoke. They seem to have like a following there, and they were excited and they were engaged, and it was unusual. It was just this little corner, but it was a really nice attitude in the headphone section, where usually it's just people just headphones on, sitting in a chair.
And that's a different crowd. I mean, I think that ZMF has always got a good group of folks that are there. It's nice to hear that about the earbud. The HiFi booth has always got people in front of it asking questions, and the HiFi booth always has people that are energetic and happy to talk about anything about their product line. So it's really encouraging to see those kinds of things. Moon has always got all sorts of weird, different, crazy stuff at there.
That diversity in option is nice, because it used to be where you go and you like, if you sat down at a manufacturer's table and you were like, oh, this is the amp I want to hear is only at this table, and it's at a headphone manufacturer. They don't let you listen to other people's headphones on that amp.
Right.
So having all the amps, being able to switch them with different headphones is kind of a blessing, I think. But also, I want to mention, too, the reason it's kind of a big deal is because we just came from the Florida show, and where headphone was barely represented. They had a couple of independent at the top, but there wasn't like this collective community feel vibe that we had going at this show. So I just find that kind of refreshing in the in the Chicago area here.
You can always tell how successful an ear gear area is at any given show based on how tall the piles of stuff on the tables are. You see stacks and stacks of things, you know that they're bringing it because they're moving it and because, there's interest in it. And Moon Audio, like you said, is one of the most, they have one of the widest selections of gear that they bring to shows, which is always really cool. It's pretty much, if you're really an enthusiast and you needed just a Redux, you had just 2 hours, you could go sit down at the Moon table and kind of try almost everything new that, and kind of get the Redux on what is, there.
One quick note about them is Moon Audio is expanding their cable line. So they've been very famous for their headphone cables. They are going to send me a whole loom of their premium cables, and I'm looking forward to it because I bought a cable for my name 50, because you have to have the 3-pin thing. And so I got one from them because I knew they had them, and it was superb. It's better than the ones that Name sells by far. So I'm excited to test out these cables.
The Past Labs, they released a brand new SIT4 that I got to hear in one of their rooms.
Past Labs, or is it First SWAT?
First SWAT, yes.
First SWAT, yeah.
Yep, First SWAT SIT4. And it actually sounded pretty decent, and still 10 watts.
I like First
and the thing that I thought was really exciting, though, is that Nelson is also working on a SIT5, which will be dual monos. That'll probably be more like a 40-ish watt version of that SIT4, which actually could maybe drive some speakers that we could actually use and listen to. So I thought that was kind of an interesting take on some things that I thought was a pretty cool tidbit. One thing in the Griffin room, they've got I'm not sure if I got the name right, but it's a power zone conditioner of some kind or another. And they did kind of an A/B demo with it in and out. And it kind of added some depth and presence to the recording that was like, well, I certainly heard a difference. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing. Those were the two that jumped out to me.
The one new thing that I heard that I loved was the new Fern & Roby number 2 amp.
Yeah, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I literally was just about to say that.
I did his room late last night, and I was just like, I love Fern & Roby. I love their sound. I've never heard it sound so good as I did. So he had the Raven 3 speakers, but usually he used to make everything in this American walnut, this darker American walnut. He's making things in a lighter ash, and I love the look of it. The amp, the number 2 amp, it has a built-in MMMC phono stage in it, and it just sounded absolutely incredible. He was using a Y stack, $8,500 for this thing, and it looks spectacular. I can't find how much power it has.
25 watts.
It reminded me a little bit of the LTA stuff that he usually pairs it with, but this is his design. This is his amp. He did it by himself, and it's absolutely incredible.
I did ask him about that. LTA did not design it, so
No.
yeah.
No, because you look at the casing and you think, oh, it looks like an LTA, but no, he did the casing for LTA. That's why it looks that way.
So LTA looks like him.
Yeah, it sounded really good in there, really, really good.
Did any of you go into either the Treehouse or Amson sound rooms?
I thought this is the first time I went to Treehouse, and I had talked to him. I had dinner with him the other night, and I said, I've never made to your room because the other writers always kind of, get in there, and then afterwards I find out how great it was. So I've never sat down and heard those speakers and heard that system with those amps 2 hours ago. I thought it was really good. He even pulled a chocolate chip trip for me, and it sounded really good with whatever, 6 watts per channel. Still sounding fantastic.
One of the few open baffle speakers that I remember from this show fondly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be getting not the speakers that Rich has in his room, but he brought another pair. He'll be setting up in my house on Monday for review. So
The prices aren't that crazy.
for what it is, no.
For when you look at it, you expect to walk in there, and it was $29,000 for the speakers. They're beautiful, gorgeous sculptures and everything, and they sounded great. And they're field coil, aren't they?
The mid-range is field coil.
So usually field coil jacks up the price. So I just did those Songer.
Well, that's not a cheap driver.
No, but the Songer Audio. So he's very familiar. In fact, he talked to me about it because he admires that one as well. And it's similar. It's field coil, and it's kind of the same whizzer cones and an extra low frequency driver. But the Songer is $50,000, and his speakers start at $29,000, which it's field coil is expensive to do. So
What, Grover, I think Rich said those were like 4K?
It's $10,000 for a pair of those drivers. The wideband driver, not the tweeter, not the bass drivers, just for a pair of the they're the Atelier and they find old field coil magnets from old Telefunken and Siemens, and they hand make cones for them, and then you have to design your own power supply for the field coil. And so, the drivers are $10,000 with no power supply. He lives at a very interesting intersection. I think we've seen a little bit of a split between what I would term maybe hi-fi and audiophilia, right? With the audiophilia being represented more by, an analytical listening style. I'm looking for details within recordings. I'm listening to small differences between gear. I'm looking to hear certain levels of low-level detail, things like that. And then hi-fi being a little more, I'm looking for something which will stylishly integrate with my listening room and still sound great. Yeah. And I think he lives at that intersection essentially because...
And part of that reason that he lives in that intersection is because of his background. He was an industrial designer for many years, and so marrying that art and technology is kind of where he...
And it's not all style either. I mean, they're very stylish, but he's got a powered DSP bass. Like, he measures your room, he does the bass DSP, he's got separate amps and stuff like that, and then, of course, the tweeter. Like, everything's adjustable on it. And he's got, I would say, Rich has quite a good ear. He's not just looking for sort of warm, soupy, or vintage things. Like, he wants it to sound, good.
No, and I was witness to it. I was afraid of him kind of falling into the trap, like with Oswald Mills, where it's this really esoteric, beautiful stuff. When you listen to it, it's lifestyle stuff. But the one thing I thought of is that now that I live in this lake house in Oregon with all the forests, those speakers would be
live edge wood, and it's properly good sound
too.
And
the other cool thing is that every one of those speakers that he's going to manufacture is going to be unique. There's not two that are identical.
Yeah.
The amount of work that is involved with those live edge, just the woodwork alone, would probably drive most people to insanity.
It's a labor of love.
And the electronics are no less impressive. Did you see the 300B amp? It was 4 chassis, and it looked like an old 1930s, but like very stylish, kind of like Western Electric sort of submarine industrial. It was cool.
Well, and the preamp
really cool.
too. He found those knobs off of some really like 1940s radio gear, military radio gear. So he does some very unique things with his gear.
It's cool. There's no one else doing, I think, that thing out there that I know of. What did you think about the amps and sound room?
So Justin made some adjustments to that room after the initial setup, which I liked better. He added a little bit, turned up the upper tweeter a little bit more, and that really brought those things to life.
So that's the first time I think he's shown his speakers at a show. And it's cool because you can adjust the crossovers. He's got little autoformers. You can bring the levels of the tweeter, mid-range, or the low end up.
Kind of like what Greg Roberts' Volti does.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Well, what did you guys? Did you listen in there?
I loved it in there. I didn't know they even made speakers, to be perfectly honest. That was news to me. And,
Justin makes, besides, those are his first true amps and sound brand, but he, as a individual, has made like Altec versions for people.
He's
and
done
things
custom
like that.
work for a long time,
yes, he has.
and he's known well in that community, but he hasn't really brought it to the mainstream. And they don't sound nearly as, they don't sound rolled off or vintage in a way that you would expect looking at them. They sound actually quite wide bandwidth, I thought.
Well, shouldn't it be called speakers and sound then?
Did you guys see the new little integrator that was orange on the back wall?
That was so cute. He told me, I walked in, he said, "What is that?" He said, 17 watts of pure love.
So he's a really big vintage enthusiast, and he was telling me that is his new take on like the Dynaco amps of old. But he redid it, and he's borrowing some elements from that. And I thought that was really cool because he's like he really pays homage to the past, but with a modern flair. So. I was excited for that. Yeah, it didn't have a lot of wattage, but I think it wasn't quite as expensive, and it's not as immense.
So he said $6K for it, which is pretty affordable in his product line. Right. And I've never heard an EL84 amp sound bad. That tube is just such a sweet sounding tube.
And it was an integrated amp.
It was a 17 watt EL84 based off of a Dynaco ST70.
70.
Yeah.
So I've got the Arches in house right now, and so there'll be a review forthcoming for those. Those are Amps and Sounds flagships.
Those are kind of wild. They're way cleaner than you would expect from a tube amp of that style.
But he was running the Zions in his room this year?
No, he had the new 300B amp. It was a Black Pearl. No, it was a Black Pearl XL. So he's got bigger transformer cores in this one and some other tweaks. And there might be an interstage possibly. It's a sort of a bigger, beefier version of the standard Black Pearl.
And then I think he had the SME 6 Model 6 table in there, which with the Ortofon SPU cart, and that was fun. I got a little bit of like some groovy Quincy Jones music going on there that was really pumping.
It was very
good.
Dynamic in there, very lively.
It was a good sounding room. Mm-hmm.
So, drum roll. Okay, drum roll. No, we don't make. I'll put it in post, guys. Come on, we're a professional show here. We're a professional show. Oh, before we get to that,
I'm certainly not.
Grover, do you have any? Do you have anything you hate? Did you have any complaints? This is our recurring bit. Anything, any slights, anything you want to address while you have the podium?
Don't blow up the bathroom.
Yes!
You stole mine. I was going to say that too.
Man, especially in the towers where not the atrium towers, but like the towers proper. Like, man, don't blow up the bathroom on like a Friday morning.
Yeah.
16th floor was like, it was dangerous.
That was against the Geneva Conventions. What happened? That was...
So now, drum roll. And let's start with Mark. What's your pick, number one? Tell me what your best of show is.
Because I heard so much in the last few hours that qualifies. I was really happy with both the Vinny rooms with Mark Sosa. I lean toward the QLNs because I love QLNs, and this is a speaker that they've had, me on their list waiting to review it, and I want to do that. But I think I was really so impressed with the Jeff Joseph, Curtis and Doshi and Jay Sakura. I don't know if it was the new ATIS cartridge or not, or it was Jeff Joseph's new speakers, the Ultras version, but they always wind up being my number 2 or my number 3 favorite of the show. And with these improvements in these products, it's I was just so happy and comfy in there. And so I think they've gotten to the point where I'm going to pick them as best sound show so far.
Doc, pull out the notebook. He's got a very thick...
It's gonna take a while.
What was weird is I saw this thing and I was like, is that a piece of paper? Because I don't know if they make computers that take notes too now, but that's a really weird...
Yes.
And then he had this stick-like thing he held in his fingers.
The pen I use is in blood. I have to prick myself and then...
Well, you are an ER doc, so...
There's plenty to go around.
Is it fair to have a 3-way tie?
Sure.
My
twist.
I know. All right. Well, the Borison room is so good every year.
That was mine. So
Okay. Perfect. Well, that's good. So as long as somebody's mentioning it, it really is that they're just so impressive. Their stand mounts, I remember the first time I ever heard them, I thought, that's not a stand mount. I thought I was listening to their floor standers. They're so good. And I really like that Forte integrated amp that they have. That thing is slick.
And I'm working on getting that for you.
All right, perfect. The DeVore room was outstanding. Mm-hmm. This is a new product for him, this Orangutan Bronze, which is not on the website. He hasn't published any specs. I'm not sure he even gave me a price quote on it, but the concept being that all of the metallurgy in the speaker itself and in the drivers is bronze.
That's so interesting. Who else has done that? Was it us? I think it was. So I'm impressed. The first two, very excited about your selection. What's the third one?
Vinny Rossi and YG.
That was a really good room. So I'm going to be a little unusual. One thing that shocked me when I walked into the room was the Goldman, kind of all-in-one speaker system. The only thing they had was the streamer. And I think that the only reason I'm picking that is because it was so far beyond what my expectations were of what that was going to sound like. And I was like, what is this? Where's the rest of the gear? And they're like, nope, it's all in one box. And we're even thinking about making an integrated streamer in these things at some point in the future as well. I was like, okay. I just had a hard time wrapping my head around what that product was, and it sounded really good for what it was. And they also have DSP functionality, and they had not set up DSP in the room for them, and they still sounded pretty amazing for what they were. So it's kind of a weird outlier, but that was kind of a surprise for me, so I'm going to pick them.
And that's Goldmund, M-U-N-D, right?
Yes.
Yeah. There's the rhythm distribution rooms.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all the Tidal Core, all the standards, all sounded great, of course. I think the Vinny Rossi YG room was really enjoyable. That was a room that, even though I was on 2 hours of sleep and I was dragging, when I walked into that room, I was like, I could tell this sounds really good. One room that actually very much surprised me, though, was ATC. They come every show, and I have ATC in my studio, and I just think of it as such a pro audio monitor. And they had limited edition blue powered SEM20s or something. But they had a new subwoofer, which was I think one of the first subwoofers they've done with an ATC bass driver. And they've never done an ATC low-end woofer in hi-fi, but they're, of course, well-known in the big pro and mastering market.
Because they have equal parts almost active.
Yes.
Plus.
And, man, that room setup just... They always get decent sound, but something about that room was, like, really nice sounding. They I don't know if they killed it on the setup or just what, but I walked into that room and was like, wow, this is way, way better than I was expecting it to sound, and it was probably the most even sounding room at the entire show.
And they often use that unique 3-inch soft dome mid-range. Sometimes it's still part of a lot of that line. So
ATC was at AXPONA last year, and they had one of the big rooms down in the convention hall, and there were some pretty good sounds coming out of that last year. And then their room at Capitol sounded pretty good too.
They never sound bad. That's the thing. You really can't.
And
get
you
them
would
to sound
expect
bad.
them to kind of be a little clinical and maybe a little dry, but I don't know if they've changed anything or their amplification is
I asked them
different.
about the electronics. I said, is anything in electronics new? They said, well, we've redesigned some things to make them a little bit more reliable or to reproduce, to be able to, make them easier to make or something like that. But said there shouldn't be any sonic changes. But I don't know. What I was hearing, I was like, this is a little sweeter and a little smoother, I feel, than what I've heard in the
more
past.
consumer oriented than pure pro oriented.
Maybe just good setup. Hard to say, but they also weren't playing it that loud this year. And sometimes they do crank it, and it's impressive. It's impressive how much output at low distortion they can get. But even just playing quiet this year was like, wow, this room is just really kind of a little more buttery, a little smoother than I'm used to hearing from them. That was nice. It was a surprise for me.
I'm going to have to go ahead and say the Borison thing that you guys already said. But the speaker is the C1.
The C1.
And it's replacing...
So they said it's between the X line and the M line. And so the X1 is $5,500. The M1 is $100,000. So it fits in between there. But I saw the price point at $16,500, which is what the current Z1 Cryo is around that much. And I said, well, they wouldn't do anything to compete with that. But Peter Hansen, who handles it in the U.S., he said, no, it's going to replace the Z line because these guys, their research and their advancements and their innovations are happening so quickly that they will be doing this. They will be bringing in new products really quickly because they're discovering new things all the time. And they keep getting better and better at what they do.
Are they going to be offering a cryo edition of these C-line speakers?
I would imagine so because there's only one model there was only one model in the lineup that wasn't cryo in the Z thing, and that was there's a base model of the Z1, and there's a cryo version. I tested that, but I've also A/B'd the two together, and the cryo version is a huge improvement. So I think they're pretty satisfied. They already cryogenically freeze every metallic part that they in all their products. So everything is cryogenic, and they have the vat right in their factory. I've stood close to it. I was told to stand back. I was like, oh no, whoa, back up there.
Don't fall in.
Yeah, don't fall into that.
Come out Han Solo if you fell on that guy.
There's going to be the two-way that we saw. There's going to be a 2 and a 3, which are going to be a smaller and a larger tower. And then that's all they'll do in that line.
So I heard that Pink Panther song with the sax, and I think that you were there too. And it was just like the detail and the breathiness around the sax was really, really well defined. So this is the thing. It's like tonality's good, dynamic's good, all this. But I had this sense of like mouthpiece. Like the mouthpiece of sax was like...
You're like, he had 2 cigarettes today.
I guess you could say like the air around it, right? The air around that sound was really palatable, and I just like, oh, so this is really like, it's really getting me. So that's kind of how I see it separating itself. So it's just like the definition and the dynamics and all that, but really fantastic stuff.
Even if it's the fourth time I've heard those, or fifth or sixth when I go into the AGD room, I'm always impressed. I'm always reminded that their stand mounts, they sound better than 95% of the floor standing full-size speakers I've ever heard at any show. Mm-hmm. And that constantly impresses me. I don't know how they do it. So if somebody was not satisfied with that Forte integrated streaming amp and those speakers for the rest of their life, they have their priorities out of whack.
Any final thoughts, Matthew Partrick?
It was a great show. I saw, as I said, I was not unexpectedly blown away by any rooms. I was expectedly blown away by the Borison room because it's a consistent thing with them, and I thought there were a lot of great rooms and not a lot of places I went into that I was completely never heard of these people, not ever blown away, but and much more efficient this year. The one thing that I've taken away this year has been that I am really looking at speakers and integrated amps, either solid state or tube, and the rest of it I could, for my own personal taste, could take or leave.
You don't want 12 boxes?
Do I not want 12 boxes? I don't know. I kind of like that sort of low maintenance 3-box solution.
I got some horns and a couple dozen crossover boxes I could sell you.
You got to talk to my wife. She's the one that's got it. Like, oh my God, all this stuff everywhere.
I had this chat with Doug White of The Voice That Is the other night, and we were just talking. It was Andy Quint, myself, Mark was there. We were talking about professionalism, in the industry, and I think we're seeing the level of professionalism generally on the rise. And I don't mean that in terms of we're seeing less unprofessional behavior. What I mean is, there are more rooms that are better lit. There are more rooms that have good materials. So I don't say this to be self-aggrandizing or anything like that, but I actually have a lot of manufacturers call me or email me and say, how should I light the room? Are these photographs good? And a lot of the people who you see stepping up, it's I've been on the phone with them hey, you need to put lights on stuff. Or there was a room where the person who, it was a very good sounding room, but the person who was running the room was the electronics, not the speakers, and the lights were right on the speakers. And I just walked over and I just moved them. Yeah. I said, hey man, you got to have the lights on the speakers. And he's like, go ahead, I trust you. Do it. And it was then you put the lights on the electronics, which are what he's trying to sell. And it's okay, this is how, but I've seen the level of professionalism go up. More brochures, better photography, of course, we love Lee Shelley, and, more folks than ever are going and doing awesome photos with Lee, and just leveling up their game, price lists on doors, price lists, business cards out. Yeah. This makes a difference. It makes it easier for us to cover. It makes it a more enjoyable experience for everyone. It looks more professional to customers and more sound treatments. I'm really encouraged to see more people considering these things and doing a good job of all those little things that seem like they come secondary to sound, but are really important to making a product and not just a box or a speaker or So for me, just the level of professionalism increasing was really nice to see. Made it easier to take good photographs. If I may, there was one I missed. The Revival Audio, so the Tone Imports room with Jonathan Halpern, with Laban, Sugden, and the Revival speakers. I heard a Sugden integrated, and I don't remember what the table was, but it was Revival audio speakers. That room was really lovely sounding. He played a live Curtis Mayfield record that was it just drew you in, and it was inviting, and the sound was even, and it was kind of like we talked about Treehouse, that wonderful mixture of the warmth and invitingness of some historical audio pieces, but the evenness and low level detail that we expect from a modern system. That was a really nice room. Everything Jonathan Halpern carries, from Shindo to Laban he's got great ears. That guy has great ears. He looks like Jeff Goldblum, maybe even better looking.
Not possible. Come on, not possible.
But no, he always, great stuff that he carries. He's got great ears. Everything he carries, I think, is really nice.
I agree with
you.
you.
It was a good sounding room.
We're starting to see new shows pop up. So I think that the demand for shows is there, and our industry it can support more shows potentially. but it's got to be the right venues, I think.
And I do feel like we're lucky because an elevator has not broken down, unlike Florida. So like when that happens, it starts to really get crazy really fast when that happens. But I do want to say too, on that same note, I felt like the attendance behavior. I'm going to give all the attendees here a good attaboy sticker. The behavior seemed better than Florida. We had a few. There's always a few.
Florida was.
There's always a few bad players. For sure, but overall, everybody seems to be a little bit more jovial, a little nicer to their fellow human here. So everybody in Florida, take note.
Wow, Chicagoans just got called nice?
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Chicagoans were grateful and thankful when AXPONA settled here because they used to have the summer CES, and for many years, and they went 15 years without a show. Right. So when AXPONA finally settled there, they were so happy that everybody was excited.
I mean, I went to one of those CESs at the Hilton way back in the day,
right.
Back in the early '90s, and there was nothing for a long time.
And you guys, I have a market for you. Got a lot of high-end dealers here.
You can always tell the temperament of the attendees, and I would say also the number of attendees by just, like, you walk into the hall sometimes, you're like, man, it's nasty in here. Like, it's like walking through a wet towel. And if everyone is still being civil, it's crowded, but people are being well-behaved, right? When it starts to get stuffy. And I there's a few floors that were like, whoa, this is thick. But I didn't hear any grumpy, oh, like, this sucks, or this is, I heard a lot less grumping and, just more listening.
One of the pet peeves is, when show attendees are trying to talk to the manufacturer and tell them, well, you need to change this and you should do this and you need to make it cheaper. It's just not, as you say, like from a professionalism, even from the general buying public, you can have your opinions, but a manufacturer has gone through a lot of effort to make a product, and they have done their market research, however sophisticated it is, and have come up with their price points and their identity for who their customers are.
Don't be a customer that gets fired. Because sometimes as a manufacturer, you have to fire a customer. Don't be the kind of customer that gets fired. Enough people are getting laid off these days.
$25 doesn't entitle you to walk around behind the racks and trip on cables, which I saw happen at this show.
I have seen people tripping on cables in this show too.
Yeah. Everybody, they look behind the speakers. They want to, what? You want to see how it's hooked up? It's kind of a weird thing to do, but they all do it. But sometimes they get into trouble.
Or kicking over lights or, whatever.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for your contributions to the show. I appreciate you, everyone's hard work, and it has been a great show. I've had a great time. I think it's probably my favorite.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
The Occasional Podcast is a production of the Part-Time Audiophile Network, which includes PartTimeAudiophile.com, The Occasional Magazine, the PTA Newsletter, and Audiohead.com. You can stay in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The Occasional Podcast is produced and hosted by Brian Hunter, executive produced by Scott Hall at PTA Productions. The Occasional Podcast and its original associated music is monitored, mixed, and mastered on the Focal Trio 6 BE studio monitors. If you haven't already, please subscribe to The Occasional Podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.